Jolley. They are from the Centre for Psychological Research here at Staffordshire University. Sarah is a senior lecturer and as a developmental psychologist has particular interest in the influence of education on the development of children's creative abilities. Richard is an associate professor with a research interest in children's use and understanding of representations. In particular, their making and understanding of pictures. So I'll hand over to you, Richard and Sarah. Thank you.
Okay, Sarah's going to kick off.
Oh, thanks, Richard. Thanks, Sean. So yes, we're here to talk to you today a little bit about the research we've done with our colleagues within the Centre of Psychological Research, Romina and Claire as well. And we are talking about really children's drawings of their experiences of the coronavirus crisis. So just to give this a little bit of context, we've heard about some of the impacts of the pandemic. Next slide, please, Richard. But thinking about the impacts on children as well, and I saw a really interesting comment in the chat about it's not necessarily the virus that's impacted children, it's the restrictions and the things that have happened related to the virus. And we can definitely see evidence of that within the psychological literature that's building up. So colleagues Owen and Bold within the Centre for Psychological Research have reviewed the literature and have found very clear evidence that children have experienced reduced physical activity as a result of the pandemic, and also an increase in sedentary behaviours such as watching television, screen time, technology use, etc. Referring to that same mental health in children and young people report that we just heard Sue talking about, there's clear evidence that children have not only had a decrease in their mental well-being, but also that they've had increases in their loneliness and poor sleep. And yes, referrals are up, but also children self-report that they often don't have anyone to seek help and support from. They don't have an adult to talk to about their mental well-being, etc. And these figures have significantly increased in 2021 compared to 2017. So as a result, potentially, of that pandemic impact. There has also been some research which has suggested there might be positive changes for some children, such as increased quality time, spending time with family, etc. But what we can see here is clearly there have been some negative impacts really on children's lives related to the pandemic. And we wanted to investigate this further, and we wanted to use children's drawings. So why children's drawings, you might ask? Well, children generally start drawing around the age of 2. Their drawings become increasingly visually realistic. We can recognise content, themes from the real world within their drawings. Children generally enjoy drawing, and it's generally something they engage in quite prolifically and with enjoyment up until sort of early adolescence. I talked about their drawings becoming increasingly sort of visually realistic, representational of things around them. But what we also know is that children are able to express their feelings, emotions and experiences in drawings. So drawings are used often in practice as part of informal assessment processes in terms of, sort of gaining insight into the world of the child, particularly with younger children. More clinically, drawings have also been used to study children's experiences of their own illness, such as their own experiences of cancer. And in these drawings, we tend to see representations of the actual experience of the treatment, sort of representational representations of that experience, and also their own feelings and emotions relating to that treatment come through in those drawings. Other researchers have looked at children's drawings to gain insight into their awareness of illness in others. For example, Wallach and Egan-Cozen looked at children's understanding of the cold virus, and what we saw in the 25 drawings that they collected were clear representations of children's understanding of viral infections and things that we could do to protect ourselves from viral infections. Children's drawings have also been used to try and gain insight into their awareness and experiences of life-changing circumstances such as war, such as AIDS, such as the Ebola pandemic. So there's a precedent here that's been set really for using children's drawings to gain an insight into the way that their life is being impacted and affected by a pandemic. So this is what we set out to do, and this was our main research question really. We were interested in what themes children drew relating to their experiences of the pandemic. And we were also interested in whether these themes might differ based on the child's age, based on their gender, and based on whether their parent was a key worker or not. We focused on children in the UK because obviously restrictions were different in different parts of the world. And we also focused on children between the ages of 4 and 14, simply because by the age of 4 we're usually able to recognise some of the content within their drawings, a little bit less abstract and mark making, and the representational content can be identified. And usually by adolescence, children are maybe enjoying drawing less, choosing not to draw. So we felt that this age range would provide us with good insight and was the appropriate age range really to use children's drawings for. So to answer this research question, we needed participants. And so we recruited participants by targeting their parents. So we shared adverts widely on social media. We contacted schools and charity organisations such as the Scouts, Girls Guides, etc., and asked them to also help promote our research study. So we created a bespoke website, which the advert directed parents towards, and parents were able to read sort of full background information about the study. And within this, we explained that because we wanted to compare children's drawings, we wanted to try and make sure that children had a similar set of materials to create their drawings. So we asked parents to make sure that they sort of provided their children with 8 coloured pencils, and we told them what colours, and a lead pencil and A4 piece of paper. If the parents were happy for their child to take part, they gave informed consent and also answered a small number of demographic and background children questions, just so we knew a bit about the children who were taking part. We then asked parents to take a photograph of the drawing after the child had drawn it. The child was given kind of video instructions, so they had me telling them what we wanted them to draw, and what we asked them to draw was a picture which represented their experiences of how their life had changed as a result of the pandemic. There was no time limit for this drawing. As I said, parents were asked to take a photograph of the drawing and to upload it to our website. And we also gave parents or the child themselves that opportunity to provide a brief description of the drawing for us as well. So we had 68 children and their parents participate in our research. These children were all from the UK, and the majority of them were from England. Children between the ages of 4 and 14 took part. We had quite an even distribution within that. The average age of children taking part was 8.5 years. We did have more females than males taking part, and this is the gender of the child. There was a non-binary option, but none of the children in our research study selected that. We also had a relatively similar number of key worker and non-key worker children. We collected the data during time points when the country was in lockdown, and even those key worker children within our sample were children who were not attending school during those periods of time when that became an option. So the majority of our data was collected during June and July 2020. And then we did collect a small amount during that second kind of lockdown phase in early 2021 as well. And one of the questions that might be interesting to reflect on a moment that we asked parents was about the extent that the virus had impacted their family. And overall, for the children in our sample, the impact of the virus on their family had been relatively low. Okay, so I'm going to hand over to Richard now to explain a little bit about how we analysed these drawings that we collected.
Thank you, Sarah. So we analysed the drawings through a technique called content analysis, which is a research tool that determines themes from qualitative data in which the presented themes can be quantified. So in a sense, how frequent are each of the themes. Now, content analysis was originated in the analysis of language, such as written text or interviews, but for the purpose of this project, we adapted it to the generation analysis of themes in drawings so that we could generate and score the drawings in terms of themes. Now, there are two phases. Firstly is the generation of themes, and then secondly, the using of the themes to score the drawings. And in each of these two phases, there were two different pairs of raters or scorers. So in the first phase, the two content analyzers list independently all the items of content that they can see in the whole set of drawings, and they are then, that list is agreed upon, and themes or categories are created in which those content items fall into. So once these were agreed by those raters, these were then given to the scorers with the definitions and some examples, and those two separate scorers independently scored each drawing essentially for which themes of the themes that have been created are present in each drawing. They largely agreed, but I facilitated those discussions to resolve any disagreements. So let's have a look at them, and there were 17 of them. Now, hopefully, many of these themes are self-explanatory. Feelings and emotions, usually literally presented in the face. Person on their own, single person, or person self-isolating. Other drawings had groups of people, such as social bubbles, perhaps household bubbles. Furniture in buildings tended to be schools, hospitals, shops, house furniture. Nature reflected weather-related themes, animals and vegetation. Now, with prohibited and restricted behaviour, so these are banned activities and actions, often represented by a cross or some sort of prohibition sign. So not being able to go to school, not being able to go on holidays or see people outside your household. Also included signs such as stay at home, 2 metre distancing. Personal virus protection behaviour, masks, hand sanitizer, gloves, vaccine, washing hands, self-isolating. Virus contamination transmission, well, this is the virus itself and its spread. And then activities engaged in during the pandemic, well, all the home activities, homeschooling, virtual communications, family time, exercise and other outdoor activities. And as we will shortly see, those were the most common. Now, it's probably easier if we give you a worked example to see how it's done. So this is a drawing which actually was scored with 8 themes. So it looks quite a simple drawing, but actually the child was communicating 8 of those 17 themes. So those themes labels are in greeny yellow colour. And the writing in the brackets after each one, they can be called the content items that the scorers saw, which made them activate, score that theme. So I'm sure you can see smiling and sad faces, so that would have activated them to say, yeah, feelings and emotions themes being shown. You can see lockdown there, and in the bottom right hand corner, can't go out. Well, that's that would have activated the prohibited and restricted behaviour. We see personal social distancing, the 2 metres in the top right hand quadrant, and so on. You can see those examples hopefully in the drawing. So although quite a simple drawing, it nevertheless has got 8 themes. Now that 8 themes is more than the average, and I think I'm now going to ask Sarah to take over to deal with the more statistical elements of this talk. Sarah. We can't hear you, Sarah.
Apologies. Yes, I seem to be on mute. Apologies. So yeah, as Richard said, on average, children drew between 4 and 5 content themes in their drawing, and we were interested in whether this differed as a result of age, and we did find that the older children tended to draw more. So as children got older, they drew more content themes in their drawing of their experiences. We didn't find any significant differences between males and females, or between the children of key workers and the children of not key workers. So this was just overall the number of themes they'd drawn. We also looked at the themes individually. If Richard, you can move on to the next slide. Thank you. OK, so on this slide, you can see the list of themes that Richard has already shown you and explained. And you'll see here that they are in the order of the frequency with which they were represented within the drawings. So about 3/4 of the drawings included items relating to the theme of feelings and emotions. About half the drawings included a person on their own. Almost half included groups of people. About 40% furniture and buildings, etc. The themes at the bottom of this list were included in a very small number of drawings, and that meant that we couldn't do further statistical analysis on those themes. However, for those themes that were frequently depicted, we were able to look to see whether there were any differences between the younger and the older children, between the males and the females, and the children of key workers and non-key workers. And we didn't find any significant differences here in the frequency with which children in these different groups were depicting the themes. One thing just to briefly note, though, there was only 6 drawings which included content that was coded as death and loss. And all of those 6 drawings were drawn by children of key workers. So we couldn't do statistical analysis on that due to the low numbers, but I think it is an interesting finding to point out. Right, I'm going to hand back to Richard to finish off by showing you some of the drawings that we collected as part of this study.
OK, well, I hope you feel this is the best bit. Here I'll go through some slides showing some of these themes, but please bear in mind that each drawing often shows other themes than the title at the top. So feelings and emotions was most popular, so some children chose to just concentrate on that, as we can see in the top left and top right hand corner. Happy, sad, sometimes with tears, and angry and annoyed were the most common themes, but the scorers also noted other sorts of emotions such as screaming, shocked, frightened, scared, frustrated, confused. And as you can see, some children made it absolutely clear by writing the text as well, in case we missed it. But most of the drawings that showed feelings would put it in a context, as we can see in this drawing, so an actual scene of something going on. Now, some of the drawings personified feelings with emotional expression, particularly with nature, putting faces on sun, clouds and rainbows, or indeed on the virus itself. And this is in fact what we can see here in pictures of the virus, often with a smiley face, but bearing in mind the subject matter context, I think it gives an impression of rather sinister, menacing feel. Indeed, in the text at the bottom here in the drawing down here, it's saying, "I think COVID is happy and he has stolen my smile." Whereas in the top left-hand picture is taking more of a biological and behavioural perspective. The text says, "The virus is a disease that infects your lungs. It makes you very ill and you have to isolate for 14 days in the house." The picture on the right is perhaps more positive. It's noting that, you know, scientists are on the case, doing what we can, and perhaps as an implied nod to a future vaccine, which of course, thankfully, we got. Here are a set of drawings which is all about protection. As we can see from the left-hand drawings, we got the government message at the time, but in the middle and right-hand drawings, we can see the more personal demonstration of those measures, such as social distancing, masks, hand sanitizer, and staying at home. And as you can see, we've got some nasty smiling viruses as well to add into that. Restrictions, lots of drawings showing this. So the left hand side, you know, can't go to school, can't see my friends, can't see my family. And in the middle drawing, some of those can't restrictions are unpacked, particularly in the writing, as well as some adjustments that children had to make, such as online PE. I particularly like the one on the right. It's so simply drawn, but so poignant. The constriction being demonstrated through the metaphoric vehicle of a straitjacket placed on a trolley, and I feel the very simple pencil draw lines really emphasize the rawness of how life felt for many of the children. Some children chose to say, well, what I can't do and what I can do. I'm sorry they may not come across very clearly for you, but some children drew a vertical line, as we can see in the left-hand side picture, of things we can't do, seeing friends, holiday, not hugging. But then, you know, the right-hand side of that picture, making things, reading books, did illustrate that children did spend more time at home, which gave them more time to do things and play video games and so on. And in the right hand picture, I do love the personal message of family time. You know, for many families, it was a time in which family relationships were supported and developed. So the child is saying, I love you, mum, and the mum is saying, I love you too. I thought that was a particularly nice touch. And here, well, it just amaze the senses, these two, don't they? They're mesmerizing. I won't go through all of the content, but these were the most positive drawings. So these were activities children did engage with in the pandemic, and it reminded us that children could still do a lot at the home, albeit perhaps adaptations what they normally do, but also they were allowed outside, and they increased the use of technology. You know, what was helpful in keeping touch with people. This next one is sort of a personal message, communicated both visually and in text, and I'll just read it out. During quarantine, spent more time in my room playing video games with my mates. Usually I would go outside playing football all day with them. Now I can only talk to them through video games. Homework's become a heavy load for me, but I found that I've done a lot more and become a lot more routined with it. Also, board games have become more popular in the house, and spend more time with my brother and sister playing them. So, you know, again, this is, you know, recognition. Times were tough, but there were positives to come out with it. Now, finally, some children chose to do more of a chronological approach. So in the left-hand drawing, we have, you know, what could I do before? So in the top left-hand corner, you might be able to just work out to see the word, and then what was not possible afterwards. In the right-hand side, you know, the chronological approach was unpacked into a cartoon type of drawing of how the emotions of this young girl changed over time, which generally got, you know, more worse and serious and sad. But the last box does say it will get better eventually, which of course it did. So I hope those drawings give you some flavour, and I just want to wrap up the talk now. We're giving the take-home message. So the drawings presented really a multitude of perspectives, psychological perspectives, emotional, social, cognitive, behavioural, and biological. So emotions were particularly strong, social in terms of, you know, socialization, but, you know, small groups were possible, but socially seeing friends were prohibited. Cognitive, the children demonstrated their understanding of the restrictions and what they needed to do, but also beyond their own situation, the societal government position, that was very much coming through. So showed great understanding. Behavioural, you know, what new or adapted activities they did, homeschooling activities at the home, engaging with family and nature, and as well as those that they couldn't do. But also there was biological understanding of the virus and what it could do to people. So there was a wealth and richness of different psychological perspectives coming through the drawings. But as Sarah has already said, we didn't find significant differences. But what that means is that the children communicate similar themes, you know, regardless of age and gender. The younger children were not telling us a different story than the older children. Girls expressed the same common themes as boys. Children whose parents were not key workers, you know, spoke with the same pictorial voice as those who did. So the take-home message is really that children pictorially spoke with a consistent but multi-psychological perspective narrative. Finally, we just should acknowledge that our sample of the children was relatively small. It was 68, which were selected by the parents' children themselves. It wasn't possible to obtain a randomized sample representative of the UK child population. So we'd want to be somewhat cautious about generalizing our findings to the whole population. Nevertheless, we do feel our sample of children gave a very clear and mature message of the important themes of what they wanted to communicate to us pictorially. Okay, thank you very much for listening, and sorry I've gone over a bit.
Great, thank you, Richard and Sarah. That was really interesting, and particularly for me, some of the ideas about the key worker children and non-key worker children. I think some of the bits from there was really interesting.